Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, I am here to tell you about a card which is frankly mean, honestly. Really, really mean. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, what we've got is a stadium card, Old Cemetery, and I don't want to spoil the surprise too much here, but essentially this is obviously related to how you get Spiritomb in the game. And what is extremely annoying is that this is a card that would be absolutely perfect for the Spiritomb from Unbroken Bonds. Except this card is going to be coming out in Chilling Reign, which will drop approximately 6 weeks before Spiritomb rotates out. This is a very, very cruel trick played on us by the lovely folks who designed the Pokemon trading card game. But I'll tell you something for nothing, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very good stadium that I expect to see play in a whole bunch of decks. It's also one which is going to look a little bit familiar for long-time players. So our translation comes from the lovely Antoine Boulet. Congratulations again for a third place finish at that giant Japanese tournament where this was revealed. That's pretty good going. And it reads, whenever a player attaches an energy card from their hand to one of their Pokemon, excluding Psychic type Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. So basically, whenever you attach an energy from your hand, you take a couple of damage counters. And I suppose it's time to play that game. Can anybody name what card this is essentially a reprint of? Frozen City from Plasma Freeze. And if you didn't get that, don't feel too bad, because Plasma Freeze is quite an old set at this stage. It came out 8 years ago in May 2013. Now, Frozen City was ever so slightly different. You took 2 damage counters if you attached an energy from your hand to a non-team Plasma Pokemon, rather than a non-Psychic Pokemon. But other than that, you're basically talking the exact same thing. And you know what? That was a good card that saw a bunch of play. This is a good card that is going to see a whole bunch of play. I like this. Now, of course, the reason it's so gosh darn good for Spiritomb, Spiritomb's got Building Spite. Once during your turn before you attack, you may put 1 damage counter on this Pokemon, and then the attack Anguish Cry that does 10 damage base plus 30 more for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So the more damage counters, the better. The good news is, of course, in the expanded format, you can use Rainbow Energy, and attaching a Rainbow Energy with this stadium out will put 3 damage counters on, plus Building Spite is 4 damage counters, 130 damage immediately. And at this stage, we could mention that Frozen City has been legal and expanded the entire time, or we could just kind of ignore that and talk about a cool new combo, which isn't actually particularly new. My apologies. But the point is, for Pokemon like Spiritomb, this is really good. And the great news is, we do have a Pokemon like Spiritomb. It's my boy, Phanpy. Now look, I am still trying to make Donphan and Phanpy work. It is still one of my most exciting decks around at the moment, and with Excadrill rotating out in a few months' time, I have got to try and get this working. Donphan, of course, for 1 energy does 120 plus 20 to each of your bench Pokemon, but Phanpy for 2 energy does 30 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So clearly here, what we want to do is attach an energy to Phanpy, and then you take the damage counters, and then you do more with Strike Back. Or you attach to Donphan, and you've got Memory Capsule, which will allow you to copy Phanpy's attack, and then you're good and rolling anyway. It's 2 different ways to the same thing, essentially, but Donphan has more HP, so therefore a higher damage cap. Now, one of the things is, we need to really look at this in the context of Spikemuth, because essentially they both do the same thing. They are both stadium cards that will put 2 damage counters on a Pokemon. Spikemuth puts the damage on when you switch, Old Cemetery puts the damage on when you attack. Old Cemetery is easier to use. It is a lot of the time, pretty much all the time, easier to attach a single energy than it is to be switching in and out the active. But Spikemuth, you can switch in and out the active multiple times, whereas you can't really do that with Old Cemetery. As a side note, if you can, then you can. So, for instance, take something like Welder. Welder attaches 2 energy from your hand, And therefore, every time you attach from your hand, you've got to take 2 damage. Same thing with Frostmoth, and incidentally, this is a great counter to Frostmoth, because every time you attach an energy with Frostmoth, you are attaching an energy from your hand, and therefore, you have to take the 2 damage counters. And that's the thing where Old Cemetery really starts to shine and come into its own. Against decks like Welder, like Frostmoth, that are trying to attach extra energy from their hand, Cherrim, if it ever becomes relevant, or, Porygon Z, and bearing in mind, Porygon Z is now extremely relevant because it turns out that somehow Cramorant V Max is actually one of the very best decks in the format, and Porygon Z attaches lots of special energy from your hand. Against these kind of decks, there really is absolutely no competition. It is Old Cemetery all day long. And that's what I love about a card like this. We have got multiple different options here. Either you can use it as a counter to decks like Frostmoth and like Porygon Z, or you can use it to put damage on to take advantage of your own Pokemon like Phanpy, like Spiritomb, like anything that's got an outrage attack. And it can do all of this in one. Or, and I really like things like this, decks where you're just going to be KO'd. Where you're playing really weak decks, and you're going to be KO'd anyway. So what you essentially do is you leave this out as a kind of, look, I'm going to take damage when I attach, but I've got a weak Pokemon that's going to get KO'd every turn. I don't really care. You, on the other hand, do care. So I'm going to make sure that you are taking the extra damage, and that's kind of fun. Or any matchup where you are ordinarily just a tiny bit away from getting that KO. Anytime Donphan is against a Pokemon with 130 or 140 HP, this, as long as they attach a single energy at some point, will bring them down in range of an Earthquake. And extra damage is always good. And maybe if we try using Spikemuth, they're not going to end up switching all that much and it's going to be a little bit sad. They're going to need to attach energy. And don't get me wrong, they can get rid of the stadium. They can use an attack that gets rid of the stadium. They can just play their own stadium over it, whatever. If they get rid of the stadium, obviously they can attach. But it basically forces them to always have their own stadium or some other way to remove it, bearing in mind that Marshadow, a great way to sit on the bench and just wait for a stadium to come out and then bump it immediately, will be rotating. And then all of a sudden, unless they have a way to replace the stadium and the energy all at the right time, they're going to be taking that extra damage. There is one other kind of Pokemon I want to mention here, and this one's a little bit weird. It's Houndoom V. Now, Houndoom V it's different to something like Phanpy. It's not let's pile damage on one Pokemon. It's one of your bench Pokemon needs damage on. So, Houndoom for free energy does 100 damage, but if any of your bench fire Pokemon have any damage counters on, you do 200 damage. For a Pokemon like Houndoom, Spikemuth is just better. Because the problem is, it's really difficult to attach energy to the bench to damage them, while also having energy on the active. You kind of got to put the energy one place or another, and frankly, it doesn't really work. So for Pokemon like that, it's not really going to work, and that's a little bit sad, but that's not all of them. I mean, honestly, and I know I should have given up on this card a long time ago, right? I admit that, I accept that, and I don't really care. Because we're going to have about a 6-week period where the Terrakion from Unified Minds might actually work. You never know. There is a chance. What you need is damage on all of your bench Pokemon, and then you do 200 for free energy. Maybe Terrakion could finally be good. I mean, it won't, let's be clear. But a man can dream, ladies and gentlemen. A man can dream. But essentially what we've got here is a great stadium for anything like Phanpy that's got an outrage style attack. A great stadium that counters anything like Porygon Z, which wants to attach a lot of energy from the hand during their turn. And a stadium that can just put a little bit of extra damage around to help you hit numbers. This is a great stadium that's going to see a whole bunch of play. I'm giving it 5 Wassies and you can't stop me. Basically, you know how I did my video a couple of days ago talking about the rotation and giving you a bit of an introduction and basically saying about how, one of my points was, hey, stadiums, they ain't going to be as good post-rotation. Well, now we've seen a couple of really amazing stadiums that actually prove me very wrong. Hey-ho. I still want to know how good you think it is. I still want to know what you think about this, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Me nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.